Welcome to Prime Suspects. Alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr., I'm your host, Matt Landis. Adam, kicking things off as we always do here, how were college football conference championship weekend and NFL Week 14 results for Prime Sports and Betcris?
College football, great across all of them. Saturday were good numbers, green numbers across all states, all brands, and that's the good news. New Jersey, pre-game no good, live was great. Ohio beat the pros on the live, lost pre-game, and our bridge jumper lit it up. So we had a really good week, except for one player that just seemingly found all the favorites that just, nothing swung back and ended up how we needed it. But all in all, decent week. I did notice hockey was actually not so good, but, it is what it is. We've got a few other sports that are doing all right, but college, great. NFL, live, great. Pre-game, not so much.
And speaking of other sports taking place right now, let's pivot to the NBA because, Adam, back on October 21st, the day the season tipped off, we released episode 104, and you mentioned having no idea how teams looked coming into the season. Now that we're almost 7 weeks in, how, if at all, has that changed? And what insight can you share about NBA activity you're seeing from Prime Sports and Betcris customers?
Overall, the volume's sporadic and decent. I mean, it's not, we're not sweating over NBA numbers every night kind of thing. I did notice yesterday that the night game was really big volume. So I think some of these standalone games and the later games are kind of capturing some of the business and volume as the day goes on, and that's sort of the closing games. But yeah, I mean, it's NBA, it's early season. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. So I don't expect it to go sort of crazy at this point in time. It usually builds up, post New Year, post All-Star game, and then obviously when there's less on, post football and stuff like that. As for the teams, it seems like a majority of the teams are up there that are expected. Detroit, which I have a very good affirmation with from the 2004 Rasheed Wallace trade that loaded me up on the, NBA title futures. So I've always got a good spot. And I did see a couple of very smart gamblers take future wagers on Detroit about a month and a half ago. So I did follow in and I have a little taste on that as well. The other two teams, I guess, that were showing up were Raptors and Heat. Seemingly both lost 3 in a row since they sort of were, touted as an up and coming. But generally, all in all, it looks like the teams are there. I mean, Thunder 23-1. Great job there. I mean, this time of the season to concentrate and actually win that many games when some of these teams are just finding their way, screwing around kind of thing. So they obviously look dominant. Lakers up there, but there's nothing that surprising apart from obviously the Pistons 19-5 on the season.
All right. Well, Joe, I'm glad Adam had some optimism about Detroit as a team out of the Midwest because not all is well in that region when it comes to recent developments out of the sporting world. Feel like it's time for a wellness check on you. Notre Dame having been left out of the college football playoff and now opting out of playing in a bowl game. How do you view the situation from the playoff field to the bowl game withdrawal?
Well, first off, I'd like to send a shout out to friend of the pod, Spanky, since he now has a house divided with the Christmas break coming up with his son being a Golden Domer and his daughter being a freshman at University of Miami. I imagine that there's going to be quite a bit of discord in that household coming up. Let's just say this was probably a nightmare scenario for the selection committee, which, by the way, was funny watching the live shot of those guys in whatever Marriott ballroom they were all gathered together over the weekend while they were watching the SEC championship game. Looked like the membership committee of the least diverse country club in America. Look, starting off, everybody knows I'm a Notre Dame fan, but let's just say Notre Dame probably was effectively out of this one after they lost to A&M in week 2. I mean, starting off 0-2, no matter who you are, is probably tough, unless I guess you're Alabama. But, I mean, they were looking at an uphill slog. But this highlights what, as they expand the playoff field, all of this is still an imperfect beauty contest. Notre Dame might have put themselves in a tough spot, losing to 2 top 10 teams by 4 points in the first 2 weeks. But, when you look at how Alabama got in, what it exposes, people, it's great, radio waves will be filled with and social media will be filled with, comparing Notre Dame against Miami, Notre Dame against Alabama, et cetera, et cetera. Should we really have Tulane and James Madison, go Dukes, in this thing if we really want the 12 top teams in America competing for this title? Go Dukes. But really, the numbers that matter weren't strength of schedule, head-to-head wins, any of that. What really matters is the way that the college football playoff pays out money to people. So one, it doesn't pay it out to teams unless you're Notre Dame, because you don't have to share with anybody, because you don't belong to a conference. So the CFP pays out to the conferences, and then the conferences then share down to their member schools. When you looked at the Big Ten, and especially the SEC, have escalator clauses for the amount of revenue that they pull out of this thing for every team that they get in additionally over two. You can see that there's a huge motivation for the committee to be able to find a rationalization to get Alabama in that field. Regardless of what everybody might have seen during that SEC championship game, I thought it was really funny that the Athletics article on this one this past weekend was that Notre Dame gained more running yards than Alabama did during the SEC championship game. So you have that. You also have the fact that Miami is a member of one of the power conferences, so to speak, if you really want to consider the ACC a power conference when it comes to football. But it's such a tough conference that Miami wasn't playing in its championship game. You had Duke hitting Virginia with its purse in that game in overtime. Thrilling game, but not between what I would call two pillars of college football power. So, the ACC, one of the power conferences, they would have had nothing. They would have had a share of nothing. So finding a way to get Miami in there totally makes sense. So in the end, the numbers, the terms of the deal were stacked against Notre Dame. I think they lose out, the playoff loses out, if only because you have one of the arguably two most popular teams, the other being Bama, in the country, not playing for the national championship. Now, to talk about also, Notre Dame's announcement that they weren't going to decline any invitation to a bowl. God, the amount of, the couch warriors saying like, Notre Dame's taking their golden ball and going home and crying, and the number of people who did quick Photoshop work of the win like a champion or play like a champion sign in the locker room and make it like lose like a champion, cry like a baby, all of that. Look, Notre Dame's played football for 138 years. And for the period between 1926 and 1969, it was the school's policy that they did not play in any bowl games. During that time, they won 7 national championships, okay? But I think it's less than that than when you consider the modern game here now, what college football is today. And really the name that you should be thinking about isn't Notre Dame, it should be Jalen Smith, because Jalen Smith was a consensus All-American linebacker at Notre Dame and was, for anybody who can remember back to 2015, Jalen Smith was an absolute lock to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft that year as a linebacker. And what happened to Jalen Smith? In the first quarter of the Fiesta Bowl, he blew out his knee, his ACL, his PCL, anything that was holding it together, he tore it. He dropped all the way to the bottom of the second round, a move that cost him potentially, arguably, $16 million in income. So when you look at, and Jalen's injury is really what started this trend of other athletes, other players opting out of bowl games. And we've seen that. Now that's increased over the course of the last 10 years. The players just saying like, yeah, I don't want to do this. When you look at with the CFP, with the playoff system in there, bowl games really are nothing but exhibition games. And I think Notre Dame, they're saying two things. We're playing for the national championship. That's the only thing that we're concerned about. The other thing, and I think this is the smart thing, is Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame are saying to their players, you came here to win a national championship and get yourself exposure because you want to play in the NFL. And what they're saying is we're not going to waste you or risk you in some meaningless bowl game. We don't need the money, okay? And they don't. So I think it's a smart message to send to athletes if they're considering someplace that, your knees are safe because we're not going to sacrifice them on the altar of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Now, the fact that a few other schools are also doing this, think of this now. Iowa State and Kansas State both opted out of playing in bowl games this year. Their conferences fined them each $500,000 for not playing in bowl games, because what they're doing is they're penalizing their member schools for the money that they're going to lose The conferences are going to lose by their member schools not participating. So when anybody wants to talk about the love of the game or the honor of playing in one more game for your school and everything like that, that's all horseshit. College football playoff system is about enriching the power conferences. Everything else, the bowl games, is about enriching ESPN and the networks. I think it was smart what Notre Dame did to protect their players, and they live to fight another day. This will not disqualify them for, playing next year, potentially in the national championship. And the fact that they just brought in the number 2 recruiting class in America for that probably only strengthens their hand.
Well, as the saying goes, the answer is money. Now, what was the question? But pivoting from the fallout we've seen across Selection Sunday for the college football playoff to this week in prediction markets, also featuring a full spectrum of sentiment, Adam, Genius Sports CEO Mark Locke made comment at an Investor Day event that his company, quote, stands to be a winner from prediction markets, end quote. Given what we know about the high costs of official league data and also about prediction markets trading on much lower hold percentages than recreational sports books, how do you think this will go? And what do you make of whether prediction markets can afford official data with their model, if they even need official data in the first place?
Well, the prediction markets per se don't need the official data. It's the market makers that ultimately need it. And then the people on the other side playing into those market makers. I mean, Genius, like Radar, like any data providers are going to be, in this. And let's not kid ourselves. They're already in it. They're in it up to their necks. They have been for a long time. They've been in sweeps. They've been in everything that's regulated and unregulated across the global span for more than a decade. So let's not kid about that stuff. NFL obviously taken a little bit of difference of a stance as MLB and NBA had previously. Genius need to make money. They're a company worth $600-700 million, I think 3 years ago or something. Now they're, worth $2.7 billion based on data, relationships, re-upping the NFL data contracts, and then charging anyone they can through the nose for this stuff and trying to enforce the need for official data. But there was actually, and while there doesn't a lot of good stuff come out of Genius Sports, there was a comment from Jack Davidson who said prediction markets aren't replacing sports bet books. That he got right. 100%. They're not going to replace sports books or iCasinos or any of those kind of things. Betfair's been around for over 2 decades. They didn't replace sports books in the UK, and they had the pool of the whole world to play from. Same with Matchbook, BetDAC, and all these others that have come and gone, whatnot. Where he kind of got a little off track saying they're not even competing with them. There is some competition there, but there is also some affiliation where people get to play sportsbook against sportsbook, exchange against sportsbook, exchange against exchange, because they're all using different numbers, and ultimately the people that are arbitraging and using these markets that they're not going to get limited from, that they can play into for whatever the house limits are, it's an opportunity as well. So who are we kidding here? They've been in it for a long time. They're going to push into it. The exchanges as per se don't need it unless, of course, they're building their own Kelce trading team and Polymarket trading team. Then those teams need the data to be able to build these models and algorithms and offer these prices. But it's just another part of the ecosystem. Another week of us talking about prediction markets on another topic. Is it going away? I don't think so. Will they pull sports rug under them at some point? Possibly. I don't know if they have a market on that, whether they'll be still offering sports betting at December 31st, 2026 or something like that. But I think we're also seeing that there's some of these markets are kind of questionable in how they're being graded and things like that. Sports betting and the exchange is doing that. I mean, you have a final result. There's actually a score on the board that you can grade things and do that nature. But everyone's going to get into it. A few of them, yes, they're waiting to sort of get that green stamp. And the NHL isn't the NFL. NHL need money. They need eyes on their sport. They're clearly the, 4th pro sport, maybe 6th, 7th actual sport in the US behind the college sports and some others. So, they need it. They played into it. NFL are kind of the kings of it all, and they can sit back and watch it and make sure that they get a clear runway before tying their name and their brand to it.
And Joe, Adam touched on the NFL taking the position of opposing prediction markets for now, with the NHL choosing to align with them. What's your analysis of the two different approaches by the leagues and how you think the early positioning will work out for the NHL over the long run?
NHL's on an island on this one. I mean, of course, they're, like Adam just said, they're the smallest of the top 4 leagues. So, they're always looking for some way to build their audience for their game. Yeah, the NFL probably from a political perspective, and because so much of this right now is transactional political, especially here in DC, they are the ones that, have the most political exposure in Washington, DC. And they're always the most conservative when it comes to this, but that's because they can afford to move slow on things. They are the biggest. They even managed to stir controversy during the World Cup draw last week with President Trump suggesting that they should have to change their name because soccer should really be football and the NFL has to find another word. Why that didn't turn into a political maelstrom, I don't know, right? But the other thing, keep in mind that the NFL can do right now is have their cake and eat it too, because they effectively own 10% of Genius Sports, right? With their deal. So they have a pretty commanding share of their data distributor right now. So in some ways, I don't know if it's intentional or not. Roger Goodell can sit back and talk about being conservative, not associating the brand too early and everything like that. And Mark Locke can do what he always does during these calls, running around with his hair on fire, talking about how great it is, and how it's going to grow the total addressable market. And I agree with Adam right now. Until I see somebody or multiple somebodies provide documented, numbers that how, this has enlarged the sports betting market in the United States, the prediction markets, in addition to online sportsbook, in addition to offshore and everything else. That's something I haven't seen. And right now, I think it's just talking and hoping without actually having been proven out. So I'd like to see those numbers. But of course, Genius Sports has to talk up their business because while their stock value has gone up, there's far fewer customers. So anything that creates more customers for their data plans, obviously they have to be enthusiastic for. But in the meantime, the NFL sit back, wait, and in the end, if things go the way of, there's things stabilize with prediction markets, politically, legally, whatever, the NFL will make more money than any, right?
And sticking with prediction markets, Kalshi's CEO has commented that the long-term vision is to financialize everything and create a tradable asset out of any difference in opinion. This seemed to be the tipping point for a lot of people who now see this as a net negative for society at large, including people like former FanDuel CEO Nigel Eccles. Adam, the idea of financializing everything is a long way from the things you've been betting and booking for the last 25 years. How much do you buy into this idea of prediction markets as oracles of truth, as opposed to hyper-gamblification that will contribute to society's decay?
So, Matt, you obviously don't know my background that well because the things I've gambled on in my life would have you questioning my sanity. Even if you happen to have a lunch with Roxy Roxborough and hear about some of their gambling antics in the office back in the day, I guess one of them was what brand plane was landing next at the airport. And then someone managed to get wind of, getting the line up as before it came in and things like that. It was funny because even the other day I had a conversation with someone that's sort of talking about, iGaming the future and stuff like that. And I've said for a long time, I think that's the end of American society when iGaming is in 50 states. One of the links that was shared sort of pre-notes for this was Hassan the Hun, where he said gambling on news is so fucking bleak and it's a real warning sign about how much American society is deteriorated. I mean, this is where iGaming is, and this is another step to it. But, we're seeing lately where some of these results aren't clear. This is where if you're going to just offer everything, inside information on Nobel Peace Prizes, which I'm sure for a long time was kept clean and above board decades ago of Academy Awards slip-ups and things like that. This is what it is. Now they're just formalizing it. Instead of putting a 10 down on the table with someone else and betting on whether a guy or a girl works through the bar door next, is now becoming public. Next, you'll have cameras and webcams set up at the front door of a Walmart, and you'll be able to bet on over under the age of the next person walks in. Yeah, I mean, this is where it's heading. It's madness. But people are just gambling. I mean, look at the NFTs, look at crypto, I don't think it's a good idea formalizing this stuff in this nature, where you're actually having it where people from all over can come to one spot. Because I guarantee, and Betfair is a sign of this, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, it was, 33% professional bettors, 33% bookmakers, 33% recreational. Now that's like 49.8%, 49.8%, and 0.4% maybe recreational, which is probably some Indians betting cricket, the only thing sort of holding that spot. General public lose here because there's people that are monetizing this. There's people that are doing the homework. There are people that are manipulating the results. I mean, when you put on there, and going back some years, American Idol, there was points in times where people started being able to track what numbers got the most busy signals. And that was data that was published in certain websites. So you could know that if X person got the most busy signals, chances was they got the most votes and all these kind of things. So this is heading down a path of deterioration, destruction, whatever it is. The rich will get richer, the smart will be smarter and be at the top, and everybody else will get crushed. I see that's how it's playing out. I've said that for some time. I'm not looking to be an iCasino and come and target the players in that nature. But shit, everyone's doing it and they're all making the money. So now it's time to us to turn on at least a couple of slots or blackjack or things like that, but not go after that targeted marketing because everyone else is just going after the ones that really can't help themselves. I know there's lots of push on responsible gaming and all these kind of things, but there's really not that many people listening and digging into it. So I don't know where it stops. Right now, with what was said, they're not looking to stop it anywhere because ultimately they see that they can make more money out of this and be damned with who gets caught in that web of deterioration and destruction.
And I guess if we wanted to get really meta with this, Joe, we could hang odds on how much we may agree or disagree with what Adam just shared. All things considered, what do you make of this call to arms to financialize everything, and how do you see its net impact on society?
First of all, I am having so much fun listening to the CEOs or co-CEOs from the prediction market companies. In every financial forum that they go on, every time they're on CNBC or Bloomberg or at some, meeting of the Brahmins in the financial world, because it's amazing the amount of proselytizing that goes on that they have to engage in right now to sell their model because of the uncertainty of their position, But the thing that I really, really love is I want to know how much it cost from either a crisis communications company and or branding company to come up with financialize everything, because financialize everything. That's like calling a guy who pumps gas in New Jersey a petroleum transfer engineer. Gamble on everything. Gamble on everything is what we're really saying. And we're right. Adam's right. Like, we're going to be gambling on how many birds on the wire and things like that. And I think that's the result of two things. One, the irrational exuberance around the potential for this thing. But I think it's also tied to the fact that these guys have all raised a shitload of money and have these inflated valuations. And if you take a look at the footnotes, though, in the courts and other things, is I would not say that, at least when it comes to the court battles, that prediction markets are on an upward trajectory. They had an initial upward trajectory. Then I'd say it's been flattened out somewhat by the success of some of the states against Kalshi and others. And so when you think about the fact that, 80% of their revenue or 80% of their volume right now comes from sports, and that's their biggest risk, is to lose sports. If they lose sports and now they go from having $100 million in volume over the weekend to $20 million in volume over the weekend, a bunch of people who invested at an $11 billion valuation or a $15 billion valuation are not going to be happy, right? So pushing essentially the leverage on their value proposition in that, hey, you're going to be able to bet on everything. But when you combine it with stuff that's popping out in the news cycle, like the Google insider last week, who turned out who had made $3 million by posting markets on what was going to be the number one ranked Google search term. It's ridiculous. The other thing that it does is, for all of this touting this as, Kalshi and prediction markets as the ultimate sources of truth, I would say that has not been proven yet. Again, very nice brand, right? It's a very nice proposition to talk about, but we've not seen any evidence of that so far. President Trump winning on Polymarket? Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. But, when you look at everything from like the New York City mayor's race to who's the one that I pulled out? Oh, the most recent example, just because I was watching it because it used to be part of a company that I was in. Acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery. The morning that they made the announcement that Netflix was the winner of the auction, Netflix was trading they were 5% the most likely company to win that acquisition on Kalshi. So you can say like, oh, Joe, you're cherry picking and things like that. Yeah, of course I am. But that's a big ticket item to be entirely wrong about. Just markets don't equal truth. Markets equal people with money expressing their opinion. And it doesn't matter if it's the stock market. It doesn't matter if it's online sports books, and it doesn't matter if it's prediction markets. It's people with money expressing their opinion. It is not an ultimate source of truth. Sell it like that, and every time you have an error, somebody's going to stick it in your face. So right now, I really think these guys have to throttle back a little bit because they're sowing the seeds of their eventual backlash, financial and then cultural, with this bet on everything thing. As much as I bet it was fun to sit around the office of Las Vegas sports consultants with Roxy and others, betting on like what make of jet was going to land next at McCarran Airport, that's not what everybody else in society should be doing. Okay.
And as we turn the page from that topic, Adam, let's take this home as we always do. What's the most noteworthy action you're seeing across Prime Sports and Betcris on the college football playoff, bowl games, and NFL Week 15 since hanging openers?
All right, I'm usually so good at doing my homework prior, but I'm just going to jump straight into the charts here because you caught me unaware. But so we're looking at
doing it live, baby.
We're looking at Bears, got 90% of the money, really good volume. Took -6.5, -7. Now it's 7.5. Balanced on the master chart, though, at the sort of 7 flat. The other big game is the Giants and Commanders. I mean, Jesus, Commanders were just horrible. Like literally 98% the money on the Giants, 100% of the master money. It's currently sitting at 1.5 favorite, but there was some plus money on the Giants, which also at the -1, -1.5. Another one-sided game is the Vikings against the Cowboys. I guess Vikings show up for one game and then, so's up. They took the +8.5, laying a number, +8, +7.5, laying a number, +7, +6.5, +6. Cowboys have really been friendless coming back the other way. And then Rams against Lions, 97% of the money on the Rams, 100% of the master money there as well. If I look in the college football, early money, Navy against Army, 80% of the money there, 100% of the master money, going at 4.5, 5.5. The numbers are just 6 right now. Oklahoma, Alabama, 60% of the money on Oklahoma, 100% of the money, master money is on Oklahoma at +1.5. Now they're 1 point favorite. And the other one, Miami, Florida against Texas A&M, like 97% of the money on Florida, 100% of the master money there. The number's 4, they come in at 6, laying a price, and 4.5 as well. So again, it's money's flowing already for these bowls coming in, and it'll continue on for those that show up, and there is a game. But yeah, right now, people have got strong opinions looking at these because there is a lot of them that are really one-sided money. The one that's not is James Madison and Oregon, which is almost dollar for dollar balanced.
Are you kidding?
And really good volume.
Oh my God. Go Dukes.
All right, go Dukes, Joe's rallying cry for this episode. And with that, we will tie a bow around this episode. To the audience, thanks as always for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at PrimeSuspects_, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.